Shabbat Shalom. Good morning to all. Welcome to our Shabbat morning service. Lovely for me to be with you all this Shabbat morning as I was last night and to be back on the Bima. We are using service number 1 this morning. You can find it on page 105 as we welcome each other, as we transform living rooms, kitchens, wherever you are, into the sanctuary that we all share. So thinking of the theme of gratitude, as we say the prayers of our ancestors, help us, O God, to remember their faith and devotion, their joy and suffering, and make us worthy of our heritage. May the tradition we've received live in us and pass from us to generations we shall never know, enriched by the truth we have found and the good we have done. And thinking of gratitude, I wanted to share the words written by Rabbi Milton Steinberg, these immortal words for me that I've used once before, where he talks of having come through a period of illness and feeling newly afresh and alive to the gratitude of life. After a long illness, he wrote, I was permitted to step outdoors, and as I crossed the threshold, sunlight greeted me. So long as I live, I shall never forget that moment. And I remembered how often I'd been indifferent to the sunlight, how often preoccupied with petty and sometimes mean concerns I had disregarded it. And I said to myself, how precious is the sunlight, but how careless we can be of it. So may we fulfill our task on earth and receive our blessing. Yehi ratzon milfanecha Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu. Eternal God, school us in your teachings. Make us loyal to your commandments. May we never consent to evil or surrender to temptation or self-contempt. Help us to rise above selfishness. Make us responsive to the voice of our conscience. Direct our every impulse to your service today and every day. May we merit kindness and compassion in your sight and in the sight of all who behold us, and let us know your love. Baruch atah Adonai gomel chasadim tovim. Baruch Shama v'haya ha'olam baruch hu. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam. Hamchulal b'fi amo, meshubach umfa'a, b'shon chasidav v'avadav. B'shvachot u'vizmarot, nagadelcha v'namlichecha. Malkeinu yachid chei ha'olamim. Baruch atah Adonai, melech mechulal b'tishbachot.
Ashrei yoshvei veitecha, od yahalelucha, Selah. Ashrei ha'am shekach lo, Ashrei ha'am she'Adonai Elohim.
Page 111. As we read just the last part of Psalm 145. Dehilat Adonai Yadaber Pi, Yevarech Kol Basa Shem, Kodsho Leolam Va'ed.
Anagnu mevarech Yah, ve'ata ve'ad olam, Hallelujah. Yishtabach Shimcha Lad Malkeinu, Ha'el HaMelech HaGadol VaHaKadosh B'Shamayim U'Va'aretz. Ki lecha na'eh Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei Avoteinu. Shir u'shvacha, Halel ve'zimra, Brachot v'hoda'ot, Me'ata ve'ad olam. Baruch atah Adonai, habocher b'shirei zimra.
Page 135, as we turn to the Baruch Hu.
Baruch Hu et Adonai, Ham
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, yotzeh or uvorei choshech, oseh shalom uvorei et hakol, hame'ir la'aretz v'ledarim aleha barachamim, uvtuvo mechadesh b'chol yom tamid ma'aseh v'reshit, ma rabu ma'asecha Adonai, kulam b'hochma asita mela ha'aretz kinyanecha, titbarach Adonai Eloheinu al shevach ma'aseh yadecha, v'yamorei or she'asita, yefarucha selah. Baruch atah Adonai, yotzeh hamorot. Great is your love for us, eternal God, and abundant your compassion. Our ancestors trusted in you, and you taught them the laws of life. So be gracious to us and teach us. Incline our hearts to hear your words, to know and understand, to learn and teach, and with love to uphold the truths of your Torah. Enlighten us with your teaching. Make us faithful to your commandments and wholehearted in the love and awe of your name. For in love you summon us to serve you and proclaim your unity. Baruch atah Adonai, habocher bi'amo Yisrael, bi'ahava. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai echad.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed.
V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha, b'chol levavecha uv'chol nafshecha uv'chol mo'edecha. V'hayu hadvarim ha'ele, asher anochi matzavacha hayom al levavecha, v'shinantam levanecha, v'dibarta bam, v'shivtecha b'veitecha, uv'leftecha v'derech, uv'shoppecha uv'kumecha, ukashaltam lo'ot al yadecha, v'hayu lototafot beinenecha, וכתבתם על מוזות ביתך ובשעריך.
למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
And these words from Rabbi Israel Matak, truth is not the best loved of virtues, yet it is one of the noblest. And it is perhaps the hardest of them all. It needs courage and resolution and the strength of will. It must be loved for its own sake, or it will not be practiced. Moshe u'Miriam u'vnei Israel lecha anu shira b'simcha rabba va'amru kulam. שירה חדשה שיבחו גואלים לשמך על שפת הים, יחד כולם הודו והמליכו ואמרו.
אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. צו ישראל קומה בעזרת ישראל, גואלנו אדוני צבאות שמו, גואלנו אדוני צבאות שמו, קדוש ישראל, ברוך אתה
ready, join us in the tefillah, our standing prayer. Stand, sit, whatever makes it meaningful for you. We're on page 140.
Adonai sevatai tiftach ufia gitehilatecha. Adonai sevatai tiftach ufia gitehilatecha.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu ve'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak ve'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel ve'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor ve'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'konei Hakol, V'zocher Chazdei Avot ve'imahot, U'meivi Gula livnei v'neihem, Lema'an Shemo b'Yahava, Melech Ozeh Moshiach Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham, Vezrat Sarah. Atah Gibor le'olam Adonai, Mechaye Meitim atah Rav leHoshia, Mashiv HaRoach u'morid HaGeshem, Mazriach HaShemesh u'morid HaTal. ונאמר נטע להחיות מתים, ברוך אתה אדוני מחיה המתים. נקדש את שמך בעולם כשם שמקדישים אותו בשמי מרום, ככתוב על יד נביאך.
קדוש, 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 אדוני צבאות, מלוך כל הארץ כבודו.
כבודו מלא עולם.
ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו.
ממקומך מלכנו תופיע ותמלוך עלינו, כי מחכים אנחנו לך.
מלוך אדוני לעולם, אלוהי ציון, לדור ודור, הללויה. לדור ודור, לדור ודור, נגיד גודלך, ולנצח נצחים, ולנצח נצחים, קדושתך נקדיש, לדור ודור, לדור ודור, לדור ודור, נגיד גודלך, ולנצח נצחים, ולנצח נצחים, קדושתך נקדיש, לשבחך אלוהינו, מפינו לא ימוש לעולם ועד, כי אל מלך גדול, כי אל מלך גדול, הקדוש ברוך הוא, לדור ודור, לדור ודור. לנצח נצחים ולנצח נצחים קדושתך הקדיש.
Baruch atah Adonai Ha'el HaKadosh.
ישמחו במלכותך שומרי 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 שבת וקוראי עונג שבת. ישמחו במלכותך שומרי 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 שבת וקוראי עונג שבת. מקדשי שבי שבת כולם ישמעו ויתענגו מטובך שבת. ישמחו במלכותך שומרי 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 שבת וקוראי עונג שבת. ישמחו במלכותך שומרי 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 שבת וקוראי עונג שבת. והשביעי רצית בו וקידשת שבת כמדת ימים אותו קראת שבת. ישמחו במלכותך שומרי 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 שבת וקוראי עונג שבת. ישמחו במלכותך שומרי 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 שבת וקוראי עונג שבת. זכר למעשה בראשית שבת. זכר למעשה בראשית שבת. ישמחו במלכותך שומרי 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 שבת וקוראי עונג שבת. ישמחו במלכותך שומרי 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 שבת וקוראי עונג שבת.
Baruch atah Adonai Mekadesh HaShabbat. We're on page 144 as we offer together our desire that our prayers have been effective, have marked all of us. Ritzei Adonai Eloheinu bi'amcha Yisrael, u'tefilatam bi'ahava tekabel, u'tehila ratzon tamid avodat Yisrael amecha. Baruch atah Adonai, she'otecha, levadacha, b'yirah na'avod. And together, our blessing of gratitude. Modim anachnu lach she'ata hu Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei avotenu le'olam va'ed. Tzur chayenu magen yishenu, ata hu ledor vador. Nodeh lecha נספר תהילתך על היינו המסורים בידיך, ועל נשמותינו הפקודות לך, ועל ניסיך שבכל יום עמנו, ועל נפלותיך וטובותיך שבכל עת, ערב ובוקר וצהריים. ברוך אתה אדוני, הטוב שמך, ולך נאה להודות.
Sef shalom, tova uvracha, chen v'chesed v'rachamim v'rachamim aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol Yisrael, amecha, barcheinu avinu kulanu ke'echad, ve'or panecha, ki ve'or panecha natata lanu, Adonai Eloheinu. Sim shalom, tova uvracha, chen v'chesed v'rachamim v'rachamim aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol Yisrael, amecha, Torat chaim ve'ahavat chesed, ve'ahavat chesed, tzedakah Ken v'chesed v'rachamim v'rachamim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol Yisrael amecha v'tov v'tov בעיניך לברך את עמך ישראל בכל עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. שים שלום טובה וברכה חן וחסד ורחמים ורחמים עלינו ועל כל ישראל על כל ישראל עמך.
Baruch atah Adonai oseh hashalom. Let's take a few moments for silent prayer and reflection.
עושה שלום במרומה, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל כל בני אדם. הוא עושה שלום במרומה, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל כל בני אדם. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל.
We turn now to Kriyat Torah, reading of Torah, page 481.
אין כמוך ואלוהים אדוני, ואין כמעשיך מלכות
you, Michael. So we are in the last portion of Leviticus, Vayikra, double portion this year, Bahar Bechukotai. And it begins, this double portion, or Bahar begins, with the adage that God speaks to Moses, saying, I'm speaking to you, I'm telling you everything, I'm reminding you of everything at Sinai. Commentators have remarked on the fact that it seems almost shocking that at the end of Leviticus, when we've way moved past Sinai, way moved past the 10 sayings that were given there, moved right into the minutiae of tabernacle and sacrifice, somehow the end is brought back to the beginning, that all of it has been connected. In this double portion, I decided to go slightly off-piste this Shabbat by reading not our usual second piece, but the third piece, which takes it from the very last portion, Bechukotai, which literally means, and my statutes, my laws. And why? Because I wanted us to have a taste of the blessings and curses, that very provocative part of Torah that has liberal Judaism in the way it softens and makes more available to us the more manageable parts of Torah, does not encourage us to read the curses, but we're going to have a taste of the curses. For me, and I'm going to speak about this, the challenge to make relevant and meaningful this passage with its ancient barbaric notion of theology, that if you do well, things will go well for you, I think is an interesting challenge for us to take. So we are, and I'm guessing Josie will share in a moment, Torah, but we are reading from chapter 26 from verse 3. Just going to move Torah and get to the right place. I feel a sense of being blessed by Torah, having not looked into its columns for a while. And of course, as it is the very last section of Leviticus, we offer together Chazak at the end to strengthen ourselves by Torah, by community. So absolutely delighted to call up virtually Janet Ta'amod, Shena Golda, Bat Yaakov Velea, Likrat HaTorah, Levarech et HaTorah.
Baruch Hu Adonai Hamavorach.
Baruch Adonai Hamavorach Leolam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamavorach Leolam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam. Asher bachar banu mikol ha'amin. V'noten lanu et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen. Im bechukotai telchu, ve'et mitzvotai tishmeru, ve'asitem atem v'natati gishmechem be'itam, v'natna ha'aretz yuvula, ve'etz hasadeh yiten priyo, ve'hasig lechem dayesh et batzir, uvetzir yasig et zera, ve'achaltem לחמכם לסובה, והשפעתם לבטח בארצכם, ונתתי שלום בארץ, ושכתם ואין מחריד, והשביתי חיה רעה, והשבעתי חיה רעה מן הארץ, וחרב לא תעבור בארצכם, ורדפתם את אויביכם, ונפלו לפניהם לחרב, ורדפו מכם 500, ומאה מכם רבבה ירדפו, ונפלו אויביכם לפניכם לחרב. ופניתי אלוהיכם, והפריתי אתכם, והרביתי אתכם, והקימותי את בריתי אתכם. ואחותם ישן נושן וישן מפני חדש תוציאו. ונתתי משכנה בתוככם, ולא תיגל נפשי אתכם. והתהללתי בתוככם, והייתי לכם לאלוהים, ואתם תהיו לי לעם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם. אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, מיות להם עבדים, ואשבור מטות ולכם, והולך אתכם קוממיות. ואם לא תשמעו לי, ולא תעשו את כל המצוות האלה, ואם בחוקותיי תמאסו, ואם את משפטיי תיגל, נפשכם לבלתי עשות את כל מצוותיי, להפריכם את בריתי, אף אני אעשה זאת לכם, והפקדתי עליכם באהלה את השפחת ואת הקדחת מקלות עיניים ומדיבת נפש, וזרתם לריק זרעכם, ואכולו אויביכם, ונתתי פני בכם, ונפקדתם לפני אויביכם, ורדו בכם שונאיכם, ונסתם ואין רודף אתכם. So, a taste of the blessings and curses. So, if my statutes, you walk by my statutes, and my commandments you keep, and if you do all of this, then I will give you rain in their right times and seasons, and I will give the land its fullness, and the trees of the field will give their fruit, and your threshing will carry on until the vintage, and the vintage will carry on until you get to the planting season, really implying a sense of great fertility in the land, which was the greatest blessing. And you shall be eating your bread to the full, and you shall live in the land in ease and in comfort and in security. And I shall give you peace in your land, and you shall inhabit it, and you shall inhabit it with no fear whatsoever. And actually I shall remove all wild animals from this land, and the sword shall not even enter the land. Such are these promises. And you will be incredibly successful in chasing your enemies. Your enemies will fall before you by your sword, and 5 of you will chase 100, and 100 of you will chase almost 10,000. And they will fall before you. Your enemies will fall before you, and I will establish you, and you will become fertile, will grow, will massively increase there in the land, and I will establish almost once again my covenant with you, hakimoti, with you, and you shall be eating to the full all of your grain. Your old grain you'll be eating. In fact, you'll still be eating your old grain when you need to move it out of the storehouses to fill it with the new grain. And I will dwell amongst you, and you will not be afraid. And you and your soul, you will experience my soul looking very favorably upon you. And I will literally walk amongst you, and you will be my people, and I will be your God. Because of this, I brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage, where I broke down the house of bondage for you, and I brought you out to establish this statute. And now we hear the curses, not always recommended, and I'll say something later that this obviously was the least popular parasha to be called up to, and the curses would be said very quickly not to be in any way affected by them. if you do not listen to me, if you do not keep my commandments and my statutes, if you spurn them or act like you don't care about them or even hate them, then surely I will bring destruction on you and will not allow, and if you don't do any, and I will remove all the benefits of my commandments, and you will feel the heat of fear, of distress, of fever, and I will do these things for you and establish amongst you fever and consumption, that it might destroy your eyes and take away your soul. And you will plant, you will sow your seeds to no avail. Why? Because your seeds will be eaten directly by your enemies. And I will establish, almost will allow in front of you that you will be slaughtered by your enemies, and your enemies will rule over you, and those that hate you will establish themselves over you. And you will have a sense of being pursued even when there is no one pursuing you, and you will not listen to me. So, Janet, just before you offer the final blessing, let us offer the words that establish that we are still touched by Torah. Chazak, chazak, benit chazek. Strength, strength. Let us be strengthened.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher notan lanu Torah, emet v'heyeh Olam nata b'tochenu baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Yesha koach. May it bring blessing to you, blessing this Torah portion. So I'm going to back away as I'm not able to lift the scroll at the moment, as Michael lifts the scroll for us and we see the words of Torah.
Baruch Shenatan Torah, Torah. Baruch Shenatan Torah, Torah. Ve'amo Yisrael b'kedushato.
We turn now to the Haftarah from the prophet Jeremiah, one of the most appealing of the prophets. So keenly did he feel his calling, and his life is described and recorded as he seemed to have a secretary known as Baruch, who captured so many of his prophecies. And we see him saying, "Cursed be the day when I was born." His life is full of suffering as he tries. He accompanies the people, the Israelites, the Judites, into exile. He experiences the destruction of the temple all the time, trying to encourage the people to understand. Perhaps it's their spiritual neglect that is adding to their suffering. And here, echoing the Torah, we have his promise of blessings if the people reconnect and re-engage. So delighted that Philippa will be reading Haftarah for us, and lovely to hear your voice again in our services, Philippa.
We praise you, Eternal One, our God, Sovereign of the universe. You inspired faithful prophets and took pleasure in the words they spoke in truth. We praise you, O God, for the gift of Torah, your servant Moses, your people Israel, and the prophets of truth and righteousness. Thus says the Eternal One, cursed are those who trust in mortals, making mortal flesh their strength. Turning their hearts from the eternal, they shall be like a stunted tree in the desert, never seeing when good comes, dwelling in dry places in the wilderness, in a salt land where no one dwells. Blessed are those who trust in the eternal, whose trust is in the eternal. They shall be like a tree planted near water, sinking its roots by a stream, never noticing when the heat comes, its leaves green, careless of times of drought, never failing to bear fruit. The human heart is of all things the most deceitful, so perverse. Who can understand it? I, the Eternal, search the heart and test the spirit, giving to all according to their ways, according to the fruit of their doings. Those who gain wealth by unjust means are like a partridge hatching eggs it never laid. In the middle of life it will forsake them. At the end they are known to be fools. A throne of glory exalted from the beginning is our holy shrine. O hope of Israel, Eternal One, those who forsake you shall be put to shame. Those who turn from you are written in the dust, for they have forsaken the fountain of living waters, the Eternal. Heal me, Eternal One, only then shall I be healed. Save me, only then shall I be saved. For you are my praise. We praise you, Eternal One, our God, Sovereign of the universe. You have been our source of strength and righteousness throughout the ages, the faithful God whose word is deed, whose every word is trust and true.
Thank you so much, Philippa. You really brought to life the words of Jeremiah and those promises he made. We now turn to the community prayer led by Kathy.
Eternal God, we ask your blessing on our Queen Elizabeth and all the royal family, as well as those who govern our country. Guide them and all who govern our country with a spirit of wisdom and compassion, so that they care for the citizen and the stranger and bring benefit to all the inhabitants of our country and the world. Bless our brothers and sisters of the house of Israel. Bless our congregation and all its members. Be with those who seek your presence and all who are in need of healing, spiritual or physical. Let them know that you are near to comfort and sustain them. May peace exist in the state of Israel soon and in our time. May you, eternal God, grant blessing to her, established as an age-old dream and home to the oppressed. May its leaders and citizens be inspired with a faithfulness to the aims of its founders, and may the country be imbued with the prophetic ideals of liberty and justice always. May this Shabbat renew our energy to build and sustain a better world and to deepen our gratitude of so much that surrounds us. And let us say, Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Kathy. So we're going to pause before we go into the blessing for the new month of Sivan, which will come next week, just to offer a Misha Berach. I feel newly reminded that the care of the community, the good wishes that come when someone is unwell, really helps in that process of recovery. And so we really wanted to think of those who are unwell and needing prayers and thoughts from us. We think particularly of Jess Lichtenstern, who is still struggling with long COVID. We think of Monty and Miriam Bixer. We think of all those who could do with that loving hand of awareness and care and concern. So bring to mind or add in the chat those that you are particularly thinking of as we offer a Misha Berach now.
Find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Bless those in need of healing with refuah, shalema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say,
Thank you so much, Dean. So we go now to the blessing for the new month as we're reaching the end of the Omer, as Shavuot is next Sunday night. Yehi ratzon milfanecha Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu, shetechadesh aleinu et hachodesh haba, v'titen lanu chayim arukim, chayim shel shalom, chayim shel tova, chayim shel bracha, chayim shel parnasa, chayim shel chilutz atzmaot, chayim sheyesh behem yirat chet, chayim she'ein behem busha uklima, chayim she'tehei vanu ahavat Torah v'yirat shamayim, chayim she'yimalu kol mishalot libenu latova. Rosh Chodesh Sivan yeh b'yom revi'i. The new month of Sivan will begin on Wednesday. May it be the will of the Holy One ever to be praised, that it bring for us, for the whole house of Israel, life, peace, happiness and joy, deliverance and consolation. And let us say, Amen. Yehalelu et Shem Adonai ki nizgav shemo lavado.
Hasidav Livni Yisrael Am Karovo. Hallelujah, hallelujah.
or hashivenu, whichever you prefer.
Et Chaim hi lama chazikim ba v'tomecheha meusha d'racheha darchenu b'kol netivoteha shalom hashivenu
So I'm seeing the messages. Tamara saying she's missing being in the synagogue, and it's only 2 weeks to go, and we will be back here on the morning of the Ufra for Franklin and Alex, so they bring blessing on us as we'll be back in the sanctuary. So we mostly go through life thinking and hoping that if we do our best, if we do well, it will impact positively upon us. And consequently, if we err or worse, then we only hurt ourselves. It's common and easy to believe that we are responsible for just us. And that maybe is reassuring or terrifying, depending on the choices we make. But actually, it turns out that if one chooses to be part of a community, a faith, an engaged society, that is no longer the truth. We are no longer just individuals. And behaving well on our own does not necessarily afford the trappings or blessings of a safe, easy, and illness-free life, because what we do impacts others even when we don't intend that to be the case. This week, in my reading, I've been struck by certain individuals, men actually, whose lives and work have influenced others in ways they may not have intended. In the United States, the Reformed Jewish community has been rocked again by allegations that a former senior rabbi of Central Synagogue, Rabbi Stephen Zimmerman, now emeritus rabbi, behaved inappropriately, improperly, coercively with congregants 40 years ago. His movement chose not to deal with it transparently 20 years ago, and now it is having far-reaching consequences way beyond his victims and himself, beyond his synagogue, his movement, or even his country. This week I read David Baddiel's latest book, Jews Don't Count, about the extent of British anti-Semitism and its exclusion in the conversation of racism. His Twitter handle is one word, Jew, and he talks about that. That has had far-reaching effects, whether it helps or damages how we perceive ourselves in the wider Jewish community. And Stephen Bush, whose thoughtfulness made him question if he was black or Jewish enough to lead his long-awaited Board of Deputies Commission on Racial Inclusivity in the Jewish community, which I think we now hope will transform Jewish congregations as we know them forever. All those individuals, for me, demonstrated that message that our lives are impacted profoundly by how others choose to behave for ill and for good. Neatly, this final portion of Leviticus, with its provocative section of blessings and curses, makes me think again about that. Indeed, folk, as I said, used to shy away from the honour of an aliyah for this parashah, so uncomfortable were they with the curses. If you follow my laws and faithfully observe my commandments, offers the blessing, then God will cause you to prosper and be blessed. The rains will come. You will be given peace in the land. Your soul will be happy and content and at ease. But if you break my covenant, if you shun my laws, you will feel terror. You will experience the sense of being chased when no one is chasing you. Your crops will fail. Illness will overwhelm you. This theology, found here in this portion and then amplified in the book of Deuteronomy, makes up the second paragraph of the Shema. Some of us may wonder, what is the second paragraph of the Shema? Because it's been excised from our reading of the Shema in our prayer books in liberal Judaism. American Reform have done the same. Why? Because our modern intellect rails against such promises that the good will be rewarded and the disloyal, the faithless, will be punished. We have learned painfully that is not the case. It is not something we can rely on ever, ever. Indeed, the converse is often true. But there is something possible, even political, about reading this end of Leviticus in a new way, about how interconnected we are and how much effect we can have on the world that we inhabit and the society and rules that we create. Only when individuals see themselves as connected, responsible for their own behavior, for the welfare of those around them, can they be an Am Kadosh, a holy people. That is why I wanted to read these blessings and curses now, today, with the sense of what justice and decency they might bring. I have to confess I've often dismissed Leviticus for its minutiae of concerns. But here, the idea that you can bring blessings or conversely curses makes sense if it's about behavior of consequence and how consequences affect others. Environmental campaigners have understood that very early on. There is sense in understanding that what you do will have consequences on others. If we buy into ways we make community, society safer, more accountable, do we actually end up ensuring that more of us experience blessing? Not that personal sense of happiness or health, but the wider sense of how we sit in our world. I return to Rabbi Zimmerman and the allegations of sexual coercion, in particular, what has now emerged, his use of Martin Buber's I-thou theology to persuade and encourage physical closeness as well as spiritual. And the processes around him now, the women who have come forward, has invited a renewed, a more thoughtful process for the clergy code of conduct in the American Reform movement. And indeed, as we do so here, still wrestling with what would be the most appropriate way we clergy in the liberal and reform movements here in this country could act and safeguard each other and our congregants. We are still working out ways how to establish a strong and dependable ethics committee to hold ourselves to account in our congregations. The behavior of a few, as we always know, will and must impact the lives of many. And investigating what a wonderful reform rabbi in the States, Rabbi Rachel Barenblatt, calls spiritual bypassing, must be part of that for us in our communities. If there is even one abuse of power, it affects and brings curse on everyone in the community. Renee and I, my co-chair of Kol Rak, the Conference of Liberal Rabbis and Cantors, we realize the heavy responsibility on us to ensure that liberal clergy join and consider the best steps of accountability, the safe boundaries for rabbis, for cantors, and for congregants within community settings. If we can get it right for the communities, we stand a better chance for people to live in faith communities blessed and protected by those boundaries and the sense and understanding of consequences. Likewise, I find myself thinking of the blessings and curses inherent in how we understand our Jewish community and the lacunae there have been in how we have welcomed and honoured all of us. Stephen Bush's long-awaited commission, early on in our decision as a congregation to establish our own listening project for Jews of colour within our community, I saw a note from one member who suggested, were we not overreacting? Surely racism had never been seen or experienced within the walls of Finchley Progressive Synagogue. This proved not to be so, and even the misintentioned concern, greeting, or security question has impacted us all as a congregation, not just those who experienced those questions. Our own chair, Tamara, brought us as a community honour at last week's Liberal Biennial, when she was chosen to interview Stephen Bush about the commission on behalf of Liberal Judaism. And one of the issues she asked about were the witness statements of Jews who'd come forward. Stephen replied he was moved and humbled by them, and was clear that each of these exposed a weakness, even a dereliction, in the wider Jewish community that we are all members of. Out of the 119 recommendations that he made in his commission for all of us communities, Orthodox, Liberal, Reform, Masorti, all of us who are part, schools who are part of the wider Jewish world. Out of these 119 doable, manageable recommendations, he made a few that are instantly important for us as a congregation. And by taking these on, I hope we improve the whole of our community, not just the experience of those who identify as Jews of colour or from Mizrahi backgrounds. Our own Racial Justice Committee will lead on this. They will advise, they will encourage our security, our welcomers, our curriculum at religion school, and our commitment as a synagogue to do better, to be more expansive, to be more welcoming, to have a full sense of what it means to be a Jewish community, and thereby the consequence has to be that we bring blessing on all of us. Whilst we may not feel the blessing individually for such committed and religious work we often undertake, we will certainly feel its effects communally. I particularly think of these few recommendations he makes that I look forward to being part of our own synagogue. He said all organizations and other communal events should follow CST guidelines and the law and desist from racial profiling when visitors or members turn up at the synagogue who are not known by those on security duty. He suggests communal venues should consider, if they feel the need, instituting universal bag searches for every visitor, including regular attendees, not just those they feel concerned about. All visitors, he suggests, and I know that many of these we are already doing, but doing so with a greater sense of understanding, I think will add to our work. All visitors should be warmly greeted by security guards, by volunteers, and this should be incorporated into the training we offer our community. In circumstances where it's necessary to adopt a more neutral or even challenging stance, all our security volunteers should still act professionally towards everyone that they encounter. He suggests every synagogue should aim to establish a welcoming committee which operates separately in addition to those who stand at the gate. They should be represented on synagogue councils and boards, and that our commitment in every community to how we welcome guests should be part of our understanding of our purpose as a congregation. By righting these wrongs, not in the traditional language of blessing and curse, by abiding by religious laws, we stand to bring blessing to our whole congregation. So I am cheered this week by the idea of an update on blessings and curses, where the theology, once so bankrupt that it was excised from our Siddur, can be reinvigorated as a communal attempt at protection and care and a sense of consequence. That's the only way we can ensure, even partly, a better way of life for us all. We affect each other. Talmud Shavuot 39a says, Kol Yisrael Arevim Zeh B'Zeh. And each word in this phrase needs to be emphasized. All of Israel, all of the Jewish community are responsible one for the other. We are in good company. The idea that Judaism was meant to change, develop, our understanding of ancient laws can be given a new update to make them meaningful and so pertinent in our own lives and how we live. In one of the most wonderful stories caught in Talmud, we have a vision of Moses on Mount Sinai after having received all the commandments, taking a magical journey forward in time to the yeshiva of Rabbi Akiva, the same Akiva that Danny spoke of to our wonderful adult Bar Bat Mitzvah group, Akiva who only started to learn Torah as an adult, way into maturity, and yet became one of the most well thought of scholars that we have. Sitting in the back row of the yeshiva, we see Moses utterly confused, alienated, dislocated from the conversation of laws, of commandments. His spirit fell as the argument spun in circles around him that he just couldn't follow. One of the other students raised a hand and asked, Rabbi, where in the Torah does this come from? Akiva answered, this is halakha. This is the law, le Moshe mi Sinai. This is the law from Moses at Sinai. Moses' mind was set at ease. His own Torah, he understood, was so much larger than even he could understand. If this is a way to understand blessings and curses in the light of contemporary Jewish engagement, then I say bring it on, and may we be the stronger for it. Chazak, chazak, we offered at the end of the book of Leviticus. We are strengthened by the community that gathers around Torah. In that I am certain. May it strengthen our resolve to expand, to concretize, to improve our understanding of Jewish communal life inside our congregation, amongst our rabbis and cantors, in every way that it impacts our life personally. Shabbat Shalom. So we go now to Aleinu, but as we do so, let's mark the fact, as I've been aware of counting without you, but mark the fact of where we are in the counting of the Omer. We count the days of the early harvest season of Israel from Pesach till Shavuot already next Sunday night, and so symbolically walk once more the road from Egypt to Sinai, from liberty to law, from freedom to responsibility. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kdishanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al sefirat ha'omer. Today is day 41 of the Omer. Just 1 week and 1 day until we reach the end of Shavuot. So as we're aware of looking forward, let's turn to Aleinu, page 520.
Adonai hu Elohim bashamayim ima'al ve'al ha'aretz mitachat einod einod einod
So nice to hear Aleinu again. Let's turn now to the Kaddish. We have a longer list of yahrzeits from last Shabbat as well as this because of the biennial. So we join together with those who are remembering and mourning their loved ones at this time. We think particularly this Shabbat of Alan Aarons, husband of Sheila and father of Beverly Aarons, of Mark Dalton Eldridge, husband of Charlotte Dalton Eldridge, of Millie Greenfield, mother of Gordon Greenfield, of Mark Harris, father of Ruth Hoffman, of Mary Kempner, mother of Jane Greenfield, of Elsie Lewis, mother of Janet Hart, of Stanley Lister, father of Adrian Lister, Ida Navarro Palaco, mother of Renzo Fantoni, Trudy Rosenwasser, mother of Ofra Rosenwasser, Ruti Samuel, wife of Igal Samuel, Sandra Solano, sister of Gillian J., Andrew Staker, father of Dean Staker, and Margot Stone, mother of Josie Kinchin. Zichronam livracha, may their memories be for a blessing always. May those who recall and remember their loved ones be comforted in their loss as they recall all they loved best and the legacy that their loved ones have left behind as we offer the words of the Kaddish with them. Yitkadal v'yitkadash Shemei Rabbah, Bi'ama divrach Yirutei v'yamlich malchutei, B'hayechon u'v'yomechon, u'v'chayei dochol Beit Yisrael, Bagala v'zman kari v'imru Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabbah mevorach le'olam almei almaya, Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'a v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yithada v'yitale v'talal Shmei dekudusha brichu, Leila min kol birchata v'shirata, Tushbachata v'nechemata, Da'amiram bi'ama v'imru Amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shamaya, V'chayem aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru Amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'al kol b'nei Adam, v'imru Amen. Over to you, Tamara.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Thank you so much to everyone who made this service possible today. Rebecca, it's wonderful to see you, not just back with us, but back in the sanctuary. And I can tell it's causing us all to long for that moment when we can all be there with you, but wonderful to have you back with us. Thank you to Janet, to Philippa, and to Kathy. A few community announcements. As another step in coming back to the building, our KT group will be meeting this evening at 5 in the building. Not in the building, tomorrow morning at 10, Richard Green and I are leading a Cafe Ivrea discussion about does being Jewish make you a better person? So perhaps we'll I'm sure be reflecting on your sermon today, Rebecca. On Monday at 8, the Rosh Chodesh group will be meeting on the topic of my reading in lockdown, and members of the group will be sharing their personal experiences of reading. On Tuesday at 7:30, please do come to the general meeting. In a week where we may be feeling tired of elections and wondering whether our vote makes a difference, this is an election that really counts and has a very immediate consequence for us. Hotly contested, we've got 4 candidates for 2 slots for the people who will be representing us at the Board of Deputies for the next 3 years. And the meeting will be short and sweet. It has just one item. So it's of business. So please do come. Just so you know, the candidates will be notified of the results of the election immediately at the conclusion of the meeting. The rest of you will have to wait for the community email on Thursday. So I look forward to seeing you at that meeting. On Thursday at 7:30, Beit Midrash is holding a session entitled Yellow Star, Red Star about Red Hungary and its Jews under Nazism. And Richard Green is going to be interviewing child survivor Agnes Kaposi and a historian, Dr. Laszlo Schoz of the University of Budapest on that subject. So that promises to be a really interesting session. On Friday at 6, as we begin to move into Shavuot, we have a special Shavuot Shabbatot. So a great opportunity for the smalls on that occasion. And then looking further ahead, next week, of course, we will be celebrating Shavuot. I've been hearing from people who attended Biennial about what they enjoyed most, and the services were clearly such a highlight. And I think we all benefit so much when we have these opportunities to hear from all of our rabbis, from our liberal rabbis across the UK, and how fortunate we are to have another one coming so quickly. So Sunday the 16th and Monday the 17th is LJ Celebrates Shavuot, and it'll feature teaching from rabbis around the UK. I don't have a fuller program at the moment, but I know it will include our own Rabbi Rebecca in conversation with Judith Plasko, whose extraordinary book, Standing Again at Sinai, Judaism from a Feminist Perspective, I think was probably life-changing for many of us. It's now 30 years old as of last year. That seems difficult to believe. But Rebecca, perhaps you can let us know what the timing will be for that session. That's all I have to say for today. Shabbat Shalom.
Thanks so much, Tamara. So we are going to finish with a change, with a refreshing change of Ein Keloheinu, Dean's Ein Keloheinu, which you can find on page 528. And I think the Judith Plaska slot is maybe 9:30 in the evening on Sunday, but we'll be sure to share with you the whole program of learning, study, services for that festival. So final blessing for all of us. Adonai yishmor tzedcha uvoecha me'ata va'ad olam. Adonai oz le'amo yiten. Adonai yevarech et amo b'shalom. May the Eternal One guard your going out and your coming in now and always. Eternal God, grant strength to your people. Eternal God, bless your people with peace. Amen. Shabbat Shalom. So join us for Kiddush. I managed to bring my rather misshapen baby Chalot in for Kiddush this morning. So whatever you're making Kiddush over, if you're still on coffee or tea or you're moved on to wine, whiskey, bring it out now so that we can have Kiddush together. Oh yeah, whiskey's being brought out here in the corner, as you might expect.
ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם, כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ, וביום השביעי שבת וינפש. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, בורא פרי הגפן.
Amen.
Amen. לחיים.
L'chaim, l'chaim. And I'm thinking maybe we should get the knife out behind to make it cleaner to share with you all. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen. And actually it's brown. I used half brown flour. I haven't done that for a while, but I'll cut these up. Thanks. Yeah. 3 years. Wow, I was going to say 2 years. That's amazing.